Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Onward Victory Podcast. This is Joe Szymanski with By George Giant Killer. And this is today's preview for the night game between George Mason and St. Joe's, the Hawks from Philadelphia, coming to town today on Sunday to take on your Patriots. It's a noon game, so this is going to be out pretty close to game time, but it's going to come out before game time. Obviously, a big game today for your Patriots, trying to bounce back after a pretty tough/devastating loss to rivals VCU on Wednesday. Like a Sunday game here. Joe's coming in admittedly kind of hot. The Hawks, after, as expected, starting the season pretty badly, the Hawks have bounced back here a little bit. They've won 4 of their last 3, albeit those are all against teams in the bottom 7 of the conference, including their wins over Loyola Chicago and UMass at home, and then a win in a kind of a road game. Of course, they won on the road to LaSalle in Philly game, though. But 3 straight wins there. But then they did recently, though, they pushed George Washington on the road in the Smith Center into overtime on Wednesday. So this is a team that isn't, like I said, they've looked hot recently, 9-11. Overall, they are now, I believe, 3-5 in conference play now. After that loss to George Washington, so this is kind of a big win game for both teams. You know, you have Duquesne at 4-5, you've got UMass at 4-5, Richmond at 4-5, Rhodey for 4-5. If St. Joe's wins this game, they're kind of maybe potentially out of that play-in game battle. If George Mason wins this game, that kind of puts them a little bit away, gives them some gap between that pack there that's building up in the middle of the A10. That puts them at 5-4. That's only a game and a half behind Fordham and George Washington for that 4th place spot, and and they're tied with where they'd be tied in with St. Bonaventure at 5-4. Then if the Patriots win this game, so it'd be a big game today for the Patriots. A win here would be big. Like I said in the last video, the post-game review against VCU, Mason these next 4 games are really important. And I think the important thing is they're all on paper winnable games for George Mason. You've got shows at home. You've got UMass at home this coming Wednesday. Then the next week on Saturday, you're going to Chicago. You're going to Loyola Chicago, the Ramblers team that has continued to struggle. And then that midweek, then you go to Pittsburgh. You've got Duquesne, who after a strong start hasn't looked as great the last 2 weeks or so. Haven't looked as good, haven't looked as scary as maybe we thought they were starting off A10 play. The Hawks, though, we know who they're led by. It was the guy they all expected them to be led by, Eric Reynolds II, the star guard, averaging 17.6 a game, 3.3 boards, 3 assists. But the real reason for the Hawks kind of bouncing back in recent weeks has been none other than Cameron Brown, who is really having a breakout season so far. He's now up to averaging 14 points a game in the last in 2 of those wins. He had point totals of 20 and 25. Also 25 points in a close loss and a road loss to Duquesne. Of course, the real issue for teams this year for the Hawks has been their defense. One of the worst defenses in the entire country. It is just as kind of expected there. This Hawks defense not particularly very good. It's not a surprise, I think, to anyone that is kind of the thing there. Like I said, this is just not a very good defensive team. They can score. Certainly, they like to shoot the 3 ball a lot, but the thing is they don't do it particularly very well. You see them have a lot of missed threes. That's kind of been what has been their struggle this year. Like I said, they score well, but they allow quite a lot of points a game. In terms of, I'm double checking here, but yeah, this is just it's not a good team. It's one of, like I said, not the worst team in the world defensively, but they allow about 72.5 points a game. So round up, they allow about 73 points a game. It's a little bit better than LaSalle, and George Washington, who still have some of the worst defenses. Those are the 2 worst defenses in the A10. But this Joe's team, 268th in the nation in defense. Not a good team. Defensively wise, like I said, they can still score a good bit. They average around the same points per game wise, but again, their issue is they make threes, they can hit them well. But just man, it's a weird team. It's a weird team, and I think that's a lot you can say about St. Joe's. Obviously, everything that it seems like I said, it's a weird team. They are top 4 in scoring in the conference, but in terms of defense, they're bottom 3, like I said, just above LaSalle and George Washington, and just below Loyola Chicago. Of course, your Patriots coming in with the 6th ranked defense in the league, only letting up about 68 points per game. Which you got to give, I think, some credit here to the Patriots for that. So this is the interesting thing here. They have the St. Joe's makes the most 3 points a game. They're basically tied with Duquesne. They average 9.1. Duquesne averages about 8.8. But in terms of 3-point percentage, they're actually middling compared to those other teams. You've got Duquesne, you've got George Mason up there. Those two teams, those two teams are top in 3-point made percentage. Joe's is more middling. They only make it about 34% of the time, and that 2 percentage point gap is kind of a big reason why the Hawks have been struggling. They can't really hit their threes maybe as much as they like to. They also attempt way more a game than some of these other teams. They attempt almost 27 threes a game. It's kind of been their issue. They're also only shooting 68% from the line. Obviously not as bad as Mason, who's only averaging 63% from the line this year, but it's still bottom echelon there of the A10. They like to foul a lot. They average around 18.4 fouls a game. They turn the ball over a lot. They average around 13.6 turnovers. So, it's a team that struggles sometimes hitting field goals, only hitting about 42.5 right now in terms of their total field goal percentage. That is bottom 6 in the A10 there. They placed 10th, and that's barely above Fordham and St. Bonaventure when it comes to that. This is going to be a really important game here, though. Still, Mason has struggled with scoring guards already. This is not an easy game. Like I said, Eric Reynolds is going to come in. He's going to get his. Mason has struggled with scoring guards all year. Not an easy game, but on paper, Mason should win it. 6.5-point favorites on the line here. I think the big knock against Joe's is the fact that their front court has not been really all that impressive this year. I think that's kind of been their win where they've lost games. You've seen a lot of their wins coming against teams that kind of have more questionable front courts, LaSalle, Loyola Chicago, UMass, teams whose front court's been a little more questionable. Against teams who have a big who can kind of fit in the paint there, they've done not as well against Kasper Klasik, Ike Abina, someone who was kind of the 6'10" senior from Nigeria, someone who's expected to be a much better player, I think, for them this year. He had a really good last year season for Joe's. He averaged about 12.1 points a game last year for Joe's and 8 rebounds. He's only averaging 7 points and about 4.6 boards. So 5 less points, 3 less boards a game for Obina. That's actually been a huge reason why the Hawks are probably worse off right now than they've hoped to be. They're not really getting a whole lot of help from that front court there. It's actually it's been kind of one of their big problems here. So the hope is, of course, that Patriots front court can get out there, and especially Joshua Durr, who has looked great. He's looked amazing. He was averaging only about 13.4 points when we started A10 conference play. He's now up to 15.1. Oduro has looked electric in conference play, and that should not stop when we tomorrow against the Hawks. Like I said, you just look at Oduro's stat lines, point total the last couple games, 26, 22, 17, 24, and 19. Point-wise, you can't really ask more than that. My prediction, Mason, I think, pulls one out by 7 points. I think Mason beats the spread barely. I think Mason 75, Hawks 68. I think that will be what goes down tonight at EagleBank Arena. But for now, that's our preview game. Hope to see you guys all there tomorrow, today, wherever you're seeing this podcast. When we're there at the bank, I'll be there down on front court covering the game for By George. We'll see you guys there. Come on out. It'll be a good game. Get a good little taste of sports before tomorrow night's awesome NFL Conference Championship games. See you guys there. Go green and gold.